right, hello everybody. This is Emily Verreault speaking. I'm your Canadian athlete representative for Lifesaving Sport. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here today. I hope everybody can hear me and see the slides that we're showing through the computer today. So with me, I'm your host, but I have two presenters. We have James Verreault and Alexandra Ferguson, both national team athletes who are here to talk to you about training for surf lifesaving sport in the winter. So while we're presenting, feel free to ask questions during the presentation. You can also ask them at the end. At one point in time, I may have to mute participants if there's a little bit of noise, but I'll make sure that we unmute at the end. But right now, the lines are open and nobody's muted. Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead. Any questions at this time? Okay, all right, I think we'll go ahead. I'll hand it over to James.
Thank you. Hopefully this works out as planned. It's the first time I'm doing a webinar, so and that everyone can hear me. So if you can't, just let me know as well as we go through this. So training in Canada, especially in winter, is very difficult. Our short surf season makes it important when we consider the amount of preparation required in order to perform at and head towards your goals and when we're working towards our goals and ensuring that we get there. So today's presentation, are going to be going through some different ways that have shown to be successful, at least for me and for Ali, and ways to ensure that we're training for surf sports so that we think about it as a 12-year activity, not a purely 3 or 4 month, whatever, summer sports. So a bit about me. So my name is James. I've been involved in sport now for over 10 years. I've specialized as an Ironman, especially since 2009. I've lived in both Australia and New Zealand competing, and then have come back and have been training here. I was on the national team for 2012 and the 2014 teams, as well as a few other international tours. The big thing with me is that I've had to figure out a way to make sport work for me. And in order to train at an international level and compete at an international level, I had to make sure that I was prepared in the best of ways possible. So what we'll be talking through is a bit of experience. I'll try and expand it beyond just being an Ironman, but the idea of training as a year-long pursuit. Over to Al.
Okay, great. Thanks. Can you hear me okay? I haven't checked yet.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I can.
So, yep, my name's Ali Ferguson. I've been competing in life-saving sport for about 20 years. I started as a junior. I've been representing Canada internationally for about 6 years now at various invitational surf competitions. And I also represented Canada at the last World Championships, as well as the World Games that were in Colombia a few years
ago. All right, so we'll quickly talk about how training for sport in Canada. A lot of it is going to be based off here about ideas of training for and working similar muscle groups in similar ways in the off season. So, I mean, if you are purely a swimmer, then swimming would be the thing that you're doing in the pool. But if you're a runner and you don't have indoor track facilities, there's other things that we need to be doing in order to kind of survive that -30, -40 and the awful conditions that start happening definitely across Canada. So for myself as an Ironman, I do swim the pool life-saving events, as well as taking care of doing other things to ensure I'm prepared. So I'm training with the Verreault Canoe Club, and there we lift, we do yoga, we do kayak ergs, which is a dry land, like a treadmill for kayaking, basically. I have a modified double poling machine that I've used for paddleboard technique, but it's strains on the back. So I cross-country ski quite a bit. The double poling is a similar action to your paddleboarding technique. and it provides that general aerobic fitness, especially when you go into start doing longer skis up into the hills and things like that. Now, with all of these components, we're combining these aspects and building them up in order to maintain that strength and basically create that general awareness and prep through your body as you train. So for me as an Ironman, I take these disciplines in order to maintain my fitness level so that when the water does get warm enough that we can get back on it in April or so in Ottawa, I'm already hitting the ground running at full speed. So throughout the winter, I've found ways to prepare my body when I'm not able to surf ski or paddleboard or even open water swim. So I know that Emily would always be training here in Ottawa on the indoor track, but like I said, it's not something that's doable across the country. So it's finding different ways to work those muscles and that cardio with the environment and the equipment that you have available to you. So sometimes you do have to think a little bit outside of the box. So for instance, the cross country skiing, which we can do pretty much across the country, is one of those great tools that we can use to train ourselves throughout the winter for paddleboarding at least. So here's a sample of my current workouts basically a week, and you can see that it's fairly swim heavy, but I'm also cross training through weights, kayaking, cross country skiing. We even do yoga to maintain flexibility, but a lot of it is everything's about preparing yourself and how we actually can maintain that fitness level. So now, mind you, this is just what I would be doing session wise every week. It doesn't necessarily talk about hours of training and things like that.
Okay, so this is a sample of my training regime that I generally work up to into the winter time. Like James said, I think that with this sport, it's important to make the most out of the resources that you have around where you live. So the access that James has to paddling clubs and that sort of cross-training opportunity that he has out in Ottawa, we don't necessarily have the same type of training opportunity here in Toronto. And the same goes to if you were to go out west, not everyone has the same amount of resources. So it's just taking what you have and creating a training schedule that is sustainable for you to continue with through the winter time, as well as you're using all the resources that you have before you. So for example, you'll see that I generally won't get to do as many hours of training on the kayak erg or with the paddle gym because Toronto in the GTA, we just don't have as many areas or clubs that have kayak ergs and allow single athletes to come in and use them. So essentially, it's just finding what works for you and just, making the most out of it. Different training schedules do work. It's just finding what works for you, and there isn't really one right or one correct way to go about training for this sport through the winter. It's just sort of finding what works for you and finding different ways of being successful by the time springtime comes around.
So we've been talking about preparation and just thinking about sport in a full year, right, versus a summer only. So this is a brief diagram that quickly explains how training is broken down from a long-term cycle and ideology. So this is what's referred to as periodization. So by no means am I an expert on this, and there is always more information that we can lead you to. But we can break this down and we can talk about things. So when we talk about our yearly training plan or our macro cycle, this is the idea that training happens year round. And there are different phases that we go through in terms of training and general fitness over towards more specific preparation, then eventually getting into your full competition and peaking. Depending on how many competitions you have, there might be multiple peaks. And then following those peaks, you go through a transition phase, a rest phase, a recovery phase before you start back up into your general prep. So for me, following Surf Nationals this year, I took a full month off, where I was doing other activities that I'm not necessarily always have the time to do and I would like to do. I go rock climbing, I guess, and things like that during that time period, and get to do things that don't necessarily fit within my training regime, and I would be normally way too exhausted to even do during that time frame. So right now I'm into the general preparation phase and the base phase. So I'm building up aerobic power and strength capacities. So we get into different mesocycles. So these are smaller periods or periods that we can break down. So if you look at that middle portion of this little graph here, right, we're talking about those general preps, the specific preps, and then leading into competition. And then from there, my coaches and things like that, we break it down into microcycles, and this is based on my weekly training load. So this would be more specifically what each workout is and how it fits within the total workload that is being conducted every week. Because I can't go full blast all the time. It would be way too demanding on the body. And I wouldn't have the opportunity to recover in order to continue building up these different portions. So when we look at coordinating periodization, the idea of periodization or how I'm training, because our sport isn't, I don't have a surf club that I train with. I'm training with multiple facets. So I have my swim team, I have my kayak team, and then I'm doing some training on my own that's more specific to what I'm looking towards, in order to make sure that all of this works and that the amount of load that my body's going through these different microcycles to ensure that we get through these different mesocycles, we need to ensure that we really coordinate our periodization. So we need to be talking to our coaches, right? So whether it's making sure that my swimming, my paddling, my strength, my skiing, all of these things are all getting funneled through and they meet your needs. So whether you're training to be an Ironman, a paddleboarder, a surf skier, a beach flagger, or even a 2K or whatever it happens to be, the training has to work for you. Especially whenever I guess when I started looking at training throughout the year, the general answer is, well, we swim and we only swim. But that didn't make sense for what I'm doing. I mean, swimming is only one of the disciplines. It's decent cross training for paddleboarding, but with more specific training, I could become more efficient and work towards my goals and help to achieve those goals. So whatever your goals are going to be, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. The training has to work for you, and you need to let and kind of get all the different coaches on the same page with what you're doing and why you're doing it in order to make it work. So from a general point, if we're looking at periodization, we actually start our planning for our year with where our peaks are. So we have to kind of create a yearly training plan, which is that macro cycle. It's what are we doing in the next 12, 24, 48 months. Sorry, 1 second. We're going to just probably Ryan. Can everybody still hear me all right? Oh, you won't be able to. Okay, 1 second. There we go. So we start with those peak moments where we're trying to make sure that we're performing at our best. So this is really what we're setting out into our goals. But and we go from that point and work our way back to make sure that everything is in place leading up to that moment. So whether it's for me going into this season, rescue is kind of on the mind. So preparing for September is where I'm heading to. And along the way, there are different races or phases that I'm going to be ensuring that I kind of meet these goals as I work through. So I'm not expecting my body to be doing what I needed to do in September right now. So you start with your peaks, those goal moments, and we work our way backwards through this training cycle. And then from there, we're just figuring out how we make these different organizations, these different training aptitudes to work for my needs. So it's having that sit down conversation with the coaches to discuss this general plan and how we're going to get us to that point.
Okay, so, yep. So The next part is about creating a support network as an athlete. So, especially in this sport, which is a hot weathered, summer sport, this is actually, I think, one of the most important things that you can do for yourself as a high performance athlete. The idea is that as an athlete, you need to attach yourself to a number of different support streams. Like James says, it's important for all of these streams to sort of be on the same page, right? So everyone that you see here, everyone that is surrounding your athletic career and helping you succeed, should have a pretty clear idea of what your goals are and what direction you're heading in. So when we're talking about support networks, although it is, having people that are, when you're having a hard week of training, they're there to support you. But the most important thing with this is you have a group of people in every aspect of your life that are keeping you accountable to your training and your goals that you're trying to achieve. So if you look at this, friends and coaches, friends also often in our sport are also our people that we train with as well. So our peers in athletics as well as coaches. They keep you accountable, obviously, to your goals, but showing up to practice, they're the ones that are gonna, give you a hard time if you skip practice, if you come late, if you're not putting in, the amount of effort that you should be putting in, and just, keeping you accountable to actually doing what you need to be and pushing your physical limits to the point that will help you improve as an athlete. There's also the health side of it. So athletic trainers, physicians, counselors, nutritionists, all of these people in your life are keeping you definitely on track, but they're also making sure that you're taking care of yourself. So as a high performance athlete, I think it's really easy to kind of get tunnel vision, right? If you're really, really set, not that it's a bad thing, but when you're really set on reaching a really big goal that you've set out for yourself, it's really difficult if you have, an injury, especially if it's a minor injury, so you've just tweaked something, to just kind of put it in the back of your head and continue training as if you're okay. The health side of your support network are the ones that keep you accountable for doing your physio exercises, looking after your injuries, making sure you're stretching, making sure you're taking care of your body in the way that you're going to be able to continue training at the level that you need to be while maintaining your body in a healthy status. So creating this support network, especially with the coach, friends, peers, health staff, are definitely what keeps you honest and keeps you accountable for where you need to be to reach the goals that you set out for yourself. Now, if you talk about family, I think it's always easier. It definitely makes your life a lot easier as an athlete that's training all the time to have family that is not only supportive of, this sport that most people don't know about, but also supportive of the amount of time that you're willing to sacrifice and put into it to, compete at an international level or compete at the level that you'd like to. So mentally, I think it definitely makes, it makes it easier, right? If your families and friends, are interested in what you're doing, and because it's family and friends, they're always going to ask, right? So how's training going? How's this going? How's that going? And again, it just keeps you accountable to have a chat with them and and just be honest and continue on your path to the goals.
Sorry, I'm just going to add something else. So in the middle there is you. And for, I guess, myself, and I know I can speak to Emily, was doing the same thing when she was training heavily, was maintaining a training log where I'm not only indicating what I'm doing, but how I'm feeling and everything else, or even a technique journal. So writing about what I'm doing and how I can improve those things. So it's not only about also creating your support network, but creating time to help develop the mental side of your own training and that kind of resilience in yourself in order to maintain that kind of training through the dark and cold months and everything else. So next slide, I assume, Allie?
Yep, all good. Okay, so this is definitely a big one. especially for this sport where we have to now train for something that should be a really hot and warm sport through the winter months. So staying motivated. Go ahead, James, you can switch it there. So as an athlete, goals are obviously a really, really important part of improvement and tracking your progress towards where you want to be and want to become as an athlete. So I always try to organize my goals into two sort of very separate but main categories. So the first one is my task-oriented goals. So these are, really important in the way that, these are goal times, test sets. So test sets where it's a set that you repeat, and it's really accurate for tracking your progress, but it also tests, especially in this sport, right, your mental toughness, right, to see how you're improving and how far you can go. Goal times, right, it's important to continue racing through the winter. So, you're not going the whole winter training and then coming out in the summer doing, your very first race of the year. It's important to, as a track athlete, find track meets, swimmers find swim meets, anything you can where you actually get to set a real goal, do the race, right, set a goal time, and get used to that. Number one, the mental stress, the thought of it, and as well just reaching goals such as times that you can do. The other half of goals, which I think are actually equally as important because these are what keep me motivated, it makes training more fun, and these are process-oriented goals. So with my clubs and my friends that I train with here in the GTA, we'll usually have something like a challenge of the month, right? So this could be anything from, I know my training partner, we find like the most awful core sets and ab sets, like sit-ups and everything like that, that are usually to, some really upbeat song, but they're just like absolutely devastating. So we'll find things like that, and our challenge of the month is to be able to actually complete it, okay, in 30 days. Also, repeating challenge sets. So the paddle gym that I've been with, for example, with them, we have a set with 2 dice, and each number that you roll on the dice, you have to do, some ungodly activity, so like 80 push-ups or 250 sit-ups. And so, you just roll the dice, and so it's really challenging, and, you're really, really, you kind of beat yourself up, but they're something different from the generic sets and the generic practices that you do as an athlete. It changes it up, and it adds, just like that little bit of, the fun aspect to training, which I think is really important. I certainly could not train all through the winter doing, just like all task-oriented sets and task-oriented workouts and task-oriented sessions. Every now and then, like once a week, I'd say I need some sort of process-oriented, fun social set that still is completely relevant to what you're doing, and it's still helping you achieve your goals, but it's just a different way of doing it in the way that it's more upbeat and it's a little bit more lighthearted than the task-oriented goals. Okay, so outside of training, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I certainly do that I know mentally really does help me. So number one, if you look at any of the Australian series, so the Nutrigrain series, as an athlete, follow the Nutrigrain series online. You can go on YouTube and you can find a whole bunch of past Nutrigrain series videos. They're really, really motivating to actually see, it brings your mind back to the summer and what it's like to race, right? So follow the Nutrigrain series, go online, find the Aussie races, watch the professionals racing. It's very motivating, as well as social media. So I follow a number of the professional Nutrigrain series athletes on Instagram and on Twitter. Okay, so just seeing every now and then a daily reminder, it'll pop up of a photo, right, or anything like that, that just kind of mentally brings you back to the summer, and it brings you back to what it is exactly that you're doing in the winter training for this sport. Being mentally prepared. So I think it's important to, I call it daydreaming. I know that like daydreaming has some odd associations with it, but I think that it's important to every now and then kind of just daydream about the summer that's coming, or rescue that's coming up in September, and daydream about your goals and how good and how much you want to achieve at those competitions. Mental preparedness, I think, is a really important part. It keeps you excited. It keeps you wanting to move forward. It keeps you motivated, right, to go to practice and put in the effort, because if you make large goals that you really, really want to achieve, especially at an international level or a high performance level, it's exciting to think about them, right? Think what if you could achieve the goal? Yeah, it's really self-motivating to think about what your success could be like as an athlete if you do everything that you can to prepare yourself for the competitions. The bottom three, I have a lot of inside motivation activities with my friends and family. So for example, we all have these little chalkboards that we will write notes on and take photos and send them to each other. Or when we go over to each other's houses, we'll write motivational messages on them and leave them, in each other's refrigerators or in the bathrooms. Okay, so just really odd places. So I'm walking around the house and I open up my fridge in the morning, and there's a chalkboard in the morning that I get to see that has a motivational note on it of some kind, which I know seems silly, but when you're not expecting it, it's it's motivating to read. It's motivating for me to write this stuff down to send to my friends, but it's also motivating to know that you have friends and family that are very supportive of what you're doing, and they want you to succeed as much as you do.
So on top of that, I would say that if beyond just the Nutri-Grain series, right, other sports and any sports can really help to motivate you. So if you're looking at results from a canoe kayak or from international track meets and things like that, that would be another way to also keep yourself engaged. Now, I know that not everyone has a lot of people in their region training in the same way or for the same events that they do. So even things that I do with some of the my club mates that train not in Ottawa during the winter, they're away for school and things like that, right? We help keep each other accountable through text messages, phone calls, Skype, things like that. So you have to put the right people in the right places or things in place in order to stay motivated. So it's really up to you to create that network and to create that condition that can keep you motivated. So putting a person or two that you speak to or things that you do in place to maintain that motivation is really key. So as Ali was saying, like she's created a network around herself that keeps her motivated, and it's through these different things, but they didn't happen. They were created. So you have to go out and make sure that you stay motivated, that you are training and that you have everything in place in order to get the job done.
All right, so the next big thing that motivates me through the winter as well is having fun with sort of the fact that we train for a strictly summer-based sport in Canada, where we have, tons of snow every winter, which is, great. I love living here, but, it's a little bit funny if you think about it. So it's just having fun with the sport in the winter time. So I know Ottawa hosted a winter surf life-saving competition, right, where instead of having craft, they had toboggans, right, and they had to move through the snow. Myself and my paddleboard partner Elise going out in the backyard on a paddleboard and just double paddleboarding in the snow, building, angry surf rescue lifeguards out of, snowmen. So it's just having fun with this. It's okay to not be, completely serious all the time. It's, really funny to do this stuff, and it's the type of thing that you go and do it, and then you kind of laugh at, how much fun you're having, even though it's winter and you're not on a beach and it's not 30 degrees out, but it keeps you motivated, right? So it gets us, I know it gets myself and Elise excited to get back out on the water, right, and paddle with each other on the water. It just also keeps, if you're close to friends that you compete with as well in your club, it keeps the bonds between you and your teammates also pretty tight, which of course it grows on the support network that we were talking about earlier, right? It just helps you mentally stay motivated and then increase your bonds that help support you through the winter time. And this is so funny. So the other thing that keeps me very motivated, and I can say 100% that everyone listening has probably been here at this point, it's the idea of the one person or that one placing that you got that you weren't happy with last summer. So I think it's really important to, when you're training through the winter, you have to pick someone that you're going to chase. Okay, so whether it was someone at a provincial level, a national level, an international level, everyone has, that one person that just is always a little bit ahead of them, right? They beat them out in that one race, or you're always just a little bit behind them at each competition. You need to use that person as your motivation. Okay, so you have to think about them and you want to beat them. Okay, so every season I always have one person through the winter time, whether it's someone from Worlds last time that I knew that I wanted to beat at the next international championship, to someone at provincials, to someone at nationals. You have to picture who you want to beat, and that keeps you motivated, right? Going back to the support network, whenever I'm feeling unmotivated, my coach or my peers would be like, you know what? I bet this person's training tonight. And I go, you know what? You're probably right. And I would go out and work really hard at training. So the other part of this is based on everyone on this call right now and how motivated you are to improve as an athlete, odds are there's also somebody behind you that you beat out that is probably thinking of you and wants to beat you this coming summer. So it's sort of a vicious circle of wanting to catch the person in front of you while keeping in mind that there's going to be someone nipping at your heels the whole way around the race this coming summer. Maybe you are someone's person that they want to beat. So it's just staying motivated with the people that you race against and kind of working off each other to improve yourself. And then this is definitely the biggest one. So keeping your eye on the prize. I know myself, just knowing that the World Lifesaving Championships are coming up less than a year away now is really quite motivating, right? We don't have, if you look at, a training up to a World Championships, less than 12 months isn't really all that much time to get yourself to where I'm sure you would want to be. So just thinking about this year and the end of this training season, finishing with sort of the finale of being at the World Championships, certainly should motivate you to be, training as hard as you can, looking after yourself, creating these support networks. I always find that the year in between World Championships, my training's pretty good, but whenever there's a Worlds coming up, I know that myself with my training, it definitely, not that it gets easier, but it's easier for me to get out of bed in the morning and go train and do what I need to do to reach my goals, just knowing that I'll be competing internationally in less than a year. James, do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, that's the big thing, right? It's creating those goals so that there's purpose for training. You're not just training for the sake of training. There's something that you're working towards, right? There needs to be some type of payoff and some way to measure what we're doing. So the motivation, I think, is really key, especially because of the duration of how long our winter or our off water season, our non-summer season is. It's really key to make sure that we have all those things in place. So before we entered questions, really to sum up, the key in terms of how we look at sport or how I've approached sport, and I think Ali has as well, is that through a multifaceted approach, so through cross-training and things like that, through proper planning and periodization and communicating with our coaches, a bit of coordination on that side, and then setting up that sport network to stay motivated, we're able to better be prepared for sport in Canada so that when we can get on the water or get on the beach for the first time, we're not just building up general preparatory type strength and conditioning. We're already there, so we're able to stay focused and really get the work done and also reduce the risk of injury. If you're not prepared for a race or going all that hard, your risk of injury is much higher than if you were actually putting the time in throughout the year. So the sport really needs to be a 12-month type of sport. It's not just a 4-month sport. In that off season, that training is really crucial in Canada. So at this time, I guess we can open up for any questions. So I believe, I believe I have everyone unmuted at this point. So, and if you don't have a mic, feel free to type. And I can read out the question and answer. Ali and I will do our best to answer them. So,
Am I unmuted?
Yep,
Am I working?
yep, yep.
Um, I came in about 8 minutes late, so I don't know if this was in the first, like sort of James, when you started talking about periodization, uh, and then you went to your network around you. I know both of you work full time as well as train, which can be quite difficult. And I was wondering, the question's twofold. One, how you work around that, because the job on whether it's flexible or not, and two, how you went about like approaching your employers and involving them, because if you want to train and compete at this level, usually means some extra time off, and if you don't have buy-in from your employers, I could see it being very difficult. Even if you do have, like, say you had just enough holidays, whether you could speak to any benefit of still getting your employer involved instead of trying to like work around the outside.
You want to go first, James?
Sure. So I work for the City of Ottawa in recreation, and I do have a lot of support there. And it's through, I think largely how it's been approached in my case is that through my results, um, kind of I've had support from my management. They see the results, or that there's benefit from me being an athlete, and I've been able. My schedule is flexible and everything else. Now, when it comes to training and coordinating that, some training times are fixed, and I either have to have move my work hours around in order to be able to attend those training, or I have to make them upon a different time. And that's kind of also in terms of how I coordinate my periodization is I'm sitting down and I'm talking to not only my boss but also my coaches to see if I can make this all work, in order to make some type of work-life balance. Ali?
Yeah, so I'm a full-time teacher at an outdoor ed center. Um, I was when it comes to approaching your employer, James is right. It's a lot easier if you've succeeded, because I've only been working where I am for 2 years now, so it's relatively new. So when I first approached them with a sport that they've never heard of before, and I'm asking for triple the time off that I'm supposed to have in vacation, I think that it definitely would help to if they see how important it is to you and just how much you're willing to do. So I spoke to them about my success at the sport, which does help. I also show them my training schedule, because by showing them, the number of hours that I put into each week into reaching the goal for this sport, I think that they have a better understanding of how important it is to you as an athlete, and just how motivated you are to attend, for example, the World Championships. So I think that's an important way of going about it. When it comes to, say they do give you the time off, I think that you definitely should not take anything for granted. So I continuously, show appreciation and thank my employer for supporting me in the sport. I usually bring up how having a supportive employer is probably just as important as having supportive coaches and family and friends and physiotherapists. It's definitely in that circle for the support network. So just being very gracious and just showing your appreciation to them for the time off. In terms of training schedule, like James said, my hours aren't necessarily the same every day. It's not just 9 to 5. So it's just looking at your schedule, looking at your hours, and preemptively changing your training schedule to suit your job. It's making sure, if I'm going to be missing a training schedule because I work late, it's important to, make sure I do something that morning, or make sure you squeeze it in somewhere else. Although it is, it's tiring, it's a lot to take on. It's just going back to the support network and staying motivated and just always thinking about that stuff while you do it.
So the other thing I would also add is talk early to your employer about time off. So I started talking about time off for Rescue 2016 at the beginning of August this year with my boss, so that everything was in place. And I mean, I didn't just spring this on them. I made sure that everything was done ahead of time, and they'll be more willing in turn to provide you that time. Like if you're already talking and coordinating everything that far in advance, we shouldn't be having any issues with me not being there. So that's the other thing to be thinking about. Don't leave things to the very end and then be surprised when you don't get time off. You have to work ahead and make sure that, again, like it has to work for everyone. So it may mean that you have to do a bit of legwork at the front end in order to get the time off to meet your goals on the back end. Another question, perhaps?
I have another one, but I want to see if anyone else wants to go first.
It's okay. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hearing no one, and Emily, I'm glad I heard your voice because this one may be you may be able to give some insight on it. My second question is, you pointed out aptly that swimming, like you just have to swim. It's just something you need to do to keep that fitness up. Pardon me. We also know that like it is impossible to avoid running on the surf side of things. Even surf ski, if they have a dry finish, you're going to have to run out of the water, and particularly for oceans. I was wondering if either of you associate yourself with a track club, and if you do, and if not, I'll point the question towards Emily. How open different track clubs are to having cross-training athletes, the way that like swimming, often you'll have cross-trainers in masters or other groups. I was wondering, I know nothing about that world. So James, if you know it, or Ali, if you associate, and if not, Emily, if you could shed some light.
So, I mean, very simply, my running is done through the kayak club. So kayakers already train in a very multifaceted way. They run 3 times a week on the track over the winter. But also through cross-country skiing, I'm able to maintain at least that same type of cardio that I would be getting from running. Those are the 2 ways that I do it. I'm not personally part of a track team or anything, but that's how I take care of running. Ali?
Yeah, I'm the same with you, James. So I will run and I cross-country ski as cross-training, but I don't think I can speak to how open clubs are generally to cross-training athletes. I think that's Emily.
Yeah, so I pipe in. When I was competing in track and field, we had a lot of athletes, particularly hockey players and football players who would come over to cross-train. And depending on the size of the group, sometimes they would even create a separate training group for these athletes. But if not, if they're integrated right into like a sprint group or a middle distance running group, they would always have a training plan that was coordinated with their needs. So those athletes were really good at advocating for themselves and saying to the coach, no, I can't run, 5K at a time. I need something shorter because this is a cross train. I'm not, running isn't my first event. So just if you're going to be joining a track and field club, just let them know why you're there and what you're hoping to get out of it. And I'm sure they're open to working with you.
Thank you. That answers my question really well.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Elise.
So swimming is obviously a big part of training, and it's during the winter season there are a lot of competitions. But one thing I'm looking for is a little bit of guidance on where we can race throughout the season, even if we're registered with masters, and what competitions might be a good thing, and maybe some surf athletes could kind of get together and plan to attend a few throughout the year.
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, that there is, and even within the masters world, there's not a lot of competitions, right? There's 3 or 4 that are within the Ottawa region, and then if you're not in one of the major municipalities, there's a lot of like dual meets and small things like that. But beyond time trials for pool life-saving events and small meets within the area, right? There'll be provincial masters provincials, which will be around the same time as our pool nationals, I believe, this year. And there'll be I know the PN Masters hosts a meet in February every year, but it really, like you said, there isn't a lot of opportunity for racing at that level within Masters. So age group, yes, like age group swimmers and clubs, there's a lot more opportunity through the university circuit. There's a lot more, but there isn't a lot in terms of Masters swimming, anyways. Ali?
Yeah, I'm pretty much, Masters swimming doesn't offer too much. This is something I've actually been thinking about, and I'm wondering if it might be worthwhile to look into life-saving clubs in your area of where you live and trying to partner with some of them to see if once every month or once every couple months they could host like an unofficial time trial, right? Which kind of gives you the same, it's not a swim meet or it's not a life-saving meet or a competition, but at least if we could figure out a way to partner to host, like unofficial mini meets or mini time trials in an area like close to where you live, then at least it would give us the opportunity to race during the year and it would just give us practice with seeing where our times are at. But in terms of, masters swimming, the GTA generally doesn't host a whole lot, and there's almost always a maximum registration number that fills up usually really, really quick. So that's definitely a challenge for sure. I can't answer the question too well, I guess.
So I'd like to pipe in as well. It's Emily speaking. I really found that doing races in the off season really helped me prepare mentally for the summer season, especially when I was starting out in track and field. Going to a competition or a track meet was stressful. I wasn't able to focus as well during my warm-up. Before a race, I would be shaking. But the more races I did, I found that I got better and better. So practicing that in the off-season is really important and really will prepare you for the summer season. Although it's short in Canada, think about different ways you can prepare, just by doing a warm-up or, getting to the start line. You can join any sport and just try out that routine, right? So for example, in Ottawa, you could, go to a swim meet. You could go to a track meet. They have them throughout the winter. You could try snowshoe races. You could try cross-country ski races. All of those will make you go through that same process mentally of, okay, I need to calm down. I need to eat well today. I need to stay hydrated. I'm going to do my warm-up. I'm going to get to the race line. That process should mimic the exact same thing you're going to do in the summer. So don't be afraid to try out a different sport. Doesn't matter what it is. Just think of it of preparing your routine mentally.
Yeah, so this is something that I do at the start of every practice. My warm-up for my weights or my swimming or whatever it happens to be that I'm doing is always pretty much the exact same thing, especially in surf, because the beaches that we're going to be on, the conditions that we're going to be facing change. In order to make sure that my body is actually responding, I always have the same dry land routine that I do before I even go and enter the water or do all of this. So I've incorporated that into pretty much every one of my trainings, so that I'm conditioning my body to understand that we're going to be having some type of physical response required. So that's some way that I've done it. But I think Emily's hitting a good point there. It's any of the different cross training that you're incorporating into your training during the winter. Most of them will have races, and being able to do those, whether it's even a recreational cross-country ski race or a community swim event, whatever it happens to be, it's capturing those moments, taking advantage of those moments in order to test yourself. Sorry, I wasn't more help, Elise.
So do we have any other questions from anybody on the line? Okay, and you could always type to us if you have a question. All right, so I'm going to say that's it. Thank you so much to James and Ali for spending the time to teach us your tricks. And thanks everybody who attended today. I hope to be posting this on YouTube, so if you ever have any questions, feel free to contact James or Ali. Their emails are on the screen right now. I'm sure they'd be open to chatting with you. Okay, so thanks everybody, and have a good winter.
Thanks, Emily.
All right.
Thanks, guys.